Thank you for listening to Footnotes, a Fellowship Mosaic podcast. This is a space for us to dig deeper into Scripture, what is happening in our community and culture, and continue the conversations we start on Saturday nights. We're excited to have you join us as we pursue truth, holiness, and redemption together.
Well, hey, Fellowship Mosaic. Welcome to the Footnotes podcast. We hope this podcast finds you well today after our winter snowstorm. This is Jack Roberts. I get the pleasure of leading the student ministry here at Fellowship Mosaic, and I'm joined by Chip Jackson, but I'm also joined by Nick Roland today. Hey, guys.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, friends.
Saturday night really was a joy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty special. I was talking to somebody about it last night. I was talking to my parents, and I think there was something about just the smaller crew and the having both services combined, and just in a week when the storm kind of felt like it was trapping everybody in, to see our people, so many of them that were able to make it out. Yeah, it was really special. I just felt a strong sense of affection for the people in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt the same thing. I was preparing my heart like, Lord, I don't know who you're going to bring tonight, and I don't know what this is going to look like. And yeah, just got up there and was so encouraged by families making their way out, even with obstacles with the snow and things like that. So, well, we're excited to continue the conversation today. If you didn't have a chance to listen to the sermon, I took the last 10 minutes or so just to interview Chip Jackson, who's the founding pastor of Mosaic, who also serves as an elder right now, and is the director of the training center. So, Chip, I enjoyed getting to have some time together on stage. That was fun.
Jack, it was a joy. Really, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that maybe weren't there, well, that's okay, because today we're kind of continuing the conversation. And as Chip and I were preparing, I was like, man, there's so much that's so good here. I don't think we could cram this quite into 10 minutes. So let's see how much we can cram into a 20 to 30-minute podcast. So, Chip, I'll start with you, man. Something that I wanted so badly to get to share on stage together, for you to share, is just what you shared with me about how you got to Fellowship, because it is shocking to me, Chip, but you haven't always been in Northwest Arkansas.
Right.
And you haven't always been at Fellowship. So bring us in a little bit about what you shared with me about what was it, Chip, all those years ago that compelled you and Lynn, about Fellowship's mission and vision to move from Auburn all the way to Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah. Our first taste of Fellowship was in the mid-'80s. I was on staff at a church down in Fayetteville. And the thing about that church and the staff, a lot of our leaders here at Fellowship kind of worked their way through University Baptist Church. So I was on staff, and Steve Graves, who happens to be a good friend of mine, introduced me to Robert Cupp one day, and he said, listen, there's some things you need to know about this guy. He's different, and he has formed a philosophy of ministry and an approach to doing leadership development that you need to learn from him. So Robert would come down. He was already up here in Bentonville. They'd already started Fellowship, but it was embryonic. It was nothing like what it is today.
Sure.
And so Robert and I made our way to a lunch together one day, and on a napkin, Jack, he drew out kind of the philosophy, the whole produce and release spiritual leader philosophy. Now, we didn't have the language back then. We were talking about that Saturday night.
Right.
Here we are 27 years later, and the language is a lot clearer to what was going on. But even then, that was back in the mid-'80s. And it was around team play, a healthy releasing culture, where you would mobilize and equip the priesthood of the believer for taking ownership for what God had brought them to Northwest Arkansas to do. So anyway, he drew it out on a napkin, and I was hooked. And I remember taking the napkin home and looking it over and thinking, I don't care if it's in church leadership, in the marketplace, business leadership. I want to be a part of a culture like that. Right. And again, Robert was quick to say, this is just what we're dreaming about. This is what we're working on. But there was enough on that napkin that I was compelled, and have been compelled ever since, to be a part of something that is a team-based produce and release culture that's about the glory of God and the good for a whole lot of people as you do vision and mission. So that's kind of my on-ramp. Went back to Auburn, left Fayetteville, moved back to Auburn, and that's where Russell Dorsch and I got connected.
Cool.
Having seen some things as Robert had architected on that napkin, and through follow-up conversations. The whole cell celebration model, I was on staff at a church there and went to the pastor and said, listen, I've seen something in Arkansas that really, I think there's something to this, a cell celebration. So anyway, this church had a college ministry at Auburn, and at that time there was about 20,000 students at Auburn, and this church was reaching less than 100 of those college students.
Wow.
And so we kind of got together and based on the influence of what I saw going on out here, called Russell one day, and we went and grabbed lunch, and I kind of shared what I learned on a napkin with him. And we started implementing that through the college ministry at this church, just sales celebration, team-based ministry, produce and release and all that. And it worked.
Wow.
And we had significant effect and influence in the lives of hundreds of college students, or thousands even, there at Auburn as a result of it. And so, yeah.
Man, thank you for sharing, Chip. It's cool to hear that you are putting into practice what Robert had shared with you years before you got to Fellowship in Auburn, and to see what the Lord did with that. But as history would have it, you would come here at one point.
Yeah.
Sunday morning, get kind of the story that you've shared with me. Sunday morning got to a point, right? They needed some changes just because of the volume of people that were coming. It sounds like, that original triad of Robert, Gary, and Mickey were like, man, we need to do something maybe on Saturday. Let's lead that. And they came to the elders, and the elders said, we think it's the right idea, but we don't think you're the people to do it.
Yeah.
And I think, part of what you shared with me, Chip, was there's other people I think that we can reach with this Saturday night congregation of Saturday night. It wasn't even Mosaic at the time. And I just want to ask you this question. Who are the people that God brought that you remember? Are there a couple groups of people that stand out at that time that felt significant of these were the people that God ended up bringing?
Yeah, I kind of left off the story. Out of that college ministry, we planted a fellowship church there in Auburn.
Cool.
And so did that for about 9 years, and we were rocking along. And I got to a point where Russell had come out here to be under Mickey and Robert and Gary's leadership and influence. And in our mind back in East Alabama was to say, hey, you guys develop him and equip him and empower him, and then send him back down to us in a few years.
Right.
So we got to that point. Robert called me one day, and we were laying out a game plan for Russell and Dana to return. And Robert gave me a call and said, hey, I hear you're trying to take one of our staff. And I said, well, I think you guys call that releasing up there in Arkansas, bro. He said, that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because we'd like to see if you guys would prayerfully consider returning to be a part of what's going on here. And I asked, well, what's going on there? Again, significant growth. And again, the narrative, we brought this out the other night, size does not impress, and Robert was really clear even on that back in those days, but health does. And so, yeah, as you mentioned, there was to tend to the growth, Saturday night became an option. And but the elders were keen to note that would not be healthy for that triad and their families, and so that brought us back out here.
Yep.
And reconnected with Russell. We were wanting to do things together, and it's here. And back in those days, early on, that first summer that we got here in '98, we held a series of focus groups. And out of that emerged what we called Waymakers. Bill and eventually Missy Walker were part of that. Gary and Carrie Oliver were part of that. Dave Freeman and Melissa Freeman were a part of that. When you walk into the foyer on a Saturday night, and those leaders in there that are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, a lot of those were the Waymakers, 27 years ago. And that became our core. And we were being coached by Gary, and as we developed our staff, it was always to deepen and expand your core of leaders, non-staff leaders. So a lot of those leaders are still around today, and it's a joy to walk in either in a community group. I happen to be in a community group with Bill and Missy, and a lot of those Waymakers are in there. And but those were some of the personalities. When we started, Jack, we knew that we would get some of the overflow and the overcrowding of people from Sunday morning.
Sure.
And that was like one third of what we were all about. A second group was people we just didn't know would show up on Saturday night at Fellowship. And so that new friends, new relationships, new context, everybody was kind of feeling that. What does it mean to do church on a Saturday night, to get into a community group, and all of your worship and community orientation around that time frame on the weekend. And then there was a third that emerged where people had been burned in a previous church experience and just found a place that they could come and allow Jesus to scrape off the crust. One of the guys said, "We're church toast," which led to a lot of the movement within CR. But, we called them Waymakers, and that several of those leaders are still here today is really encouraging.
That is encouraging.
Still producing and releasing at 50, 60, and beyond.
Yeah, man, that's good. Nick, you still over there?
Oh, I'm here. I'm so here.
Nick, kind of want to tag you in for a moment. Tell me a little bit about, where you came in the Mosaic story and kind of what characterizes Mosaic when you kind of came in.
Yeah, sure.
What does that look like?
So I grew up here at Fellowship Rogers, Fellowship Sunday Morning, part of FSM, growing up in the student ministry, and really some of my first introduction to what was happening on Saturday night was Cassie, my now wife. We were in high school then. She came to know the Lord in high school, and to make a long story short, the church that her family was a part of was not a healthy one, and so she was still going on Sunday morning with her family to this church, but she felt a need to hear the gospel preached and to be able to worship the Lord. And so we started going on Saturday night as high schoolers to let her have an experience outside of what she was. So that was kind of the first touch point, was visiting Saturday night while each of us were going to separate churches on Sunday morning. And then when I was a junior in college, again, I was leading in FSM Sunday morning, and they had a position open up for a student worship leader on the student team. So I was 21, still had my senior year in college. Cassie and I were about to get married, and they reached out and said, "Hey, would you take a look at this?" I was volunteering as a worship leader for FSM at the time, and so interviewed with Matt Newman and that team, and came on board to start serving there while I finished up college. And so that was 2008. That was 18 years ago. And so that's kind of when I entered the story. It was still Fellowship Saturday night at the time. And some of the things that I observed really quickly. I mean, first of all, the heart, Sam Hannon, who leads Fellowship Rogers, often talks about this. Like, it's really easy when you live deeply inside of fellowship culture to contrast Sunday morning and Saturday night as if they're radically different. If you come from any other church background, you say, "Oh, those are the same church." Like, the values,
Right.
everything,
Yes.
everything we're doing is the same. And so that's the first thing, is like, "Oh, this is fellowship." Like that was my first thing. But there is, for lack of a better way to say it, there's a different vibe on Saturday night. Everything is just a little bit more laid back, even at the simple level of, on Sunday morning, people wake up and get ready to go to church. On Saturday night, they're coming from having done something else. And so it does just set a different tone to what happens. I would often say that Saturday night sits both literally and figuratively between Celebrate Recovery and Sunday morning. And so that means you have a lot of people who were either have gone through Celebrate Recovery, experienced God doing something, and coming to a Saturday night church felt like a really good next step. Or they showed up on Sunday morning, were maybe a little overwhelmed by the size, and wanted something that was a little smaller and more laid back. And so that was kind of the culture that developed very quickly. There was an emphasis on being safe, talking about your brokenness, and that was really important for me as someone in their 20s. When I came on staff, man, I had a lot of sin and brokenness I had not dealt with, and I was in a really vulnerable place. Didn't know it, but was like charging ahead in life. And about 2 years in was when I brought that story to Chip, and I was like, "Chip, here's the habitual addictive sin I've been dealing with that I've not dealt with in my life." I was pretty shattered, and Chip was just like, took me in and said, "Okay, let's work toward healing. And they were so gracious to come around me in that season, like paid for me and Cassie to get in marriage counseling, to start working on things, put me through Celebrate Recovery, mentored me through that. And so for me, so much of what Fellowship Saturday Night at the time, then we changed the name to Fellowship Mosaic, was a place where we were going to be really honest about our brokenness, but persistent, like ruthless in walking with people through their brokenness. So brokenness and sin was not going to be excused or ignored. Neither was it going to be like celebrated and lifted up. We were going to go, yeah, the brokenness is really painful and it's really hard, and Jesus wants to heal you in that. And so there was a faithfulness to walk through that. So as someone in my early 20s coming on staff, it was an incredible place to heal personally, to get shepherded personally, and then to get mentored and trained off and say, a lot of young people in ministry that I talk to experience one of two extremes. They're given more responsibility than is wise at their young age. They're 24 trying to carry and lead a church, and typically people at that point aren't ready to do that. Or they're given no responsibility. They're running errands for the head pastor and never allowed to do anything. And what was really remarkable for me as a young pastor on staff at the time was the balance of being entrusted with a lot, but also always having the leadership over me and behind me to encourage me, to coach me, to challenge and rebuke me when I was needed, so that I was able to grow in a really healthy way in my 20s. So from a staff perspective, that was there. And then, there were just a lot of people in those, what for me was the early days of Mosaic, just finding freedom and finding joy in church. There was also the story that we talked about Saturday night, that people were always being sent. And that was a consistent pattern of launching and sending people. And we'll get to more of that story here in a minute, I'm sure. So, that was a little bit of our experience.
Yeah.
Nick, two things Nick brought up. Number one, he had great hair back in the day. He still does. But
Nick,
that's kind, but no, I don't.
Oh, man,
I will say on the hair thing, just so people can have some context of where I am in my life. Several years ago, my daughter, when she was, she was probably like 4, and she was in a gel pen phase, which is a phase that at least I think every young girl goes through. And she climbed up in my lap and asked if she liked to draw tattoos on my arms with the gel pens. And she said, "Can I draw a tattoo?" And I said, "Sure. What are you going to draw?" And she said, "I'm going to draw a picture of you." I said, "Oh, that sounds great." And she said, "Hey, Dad, should I draw you cool or not cool?" And I said, "Well, what's the difference?" And she said, "When you had hair, you were cool."
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, Kara, draw me cool. That sounds great. So there's some growth and sanctification that's happening with me in the loss of the hair of the early days.
It, man.
Maybe for the Instagram picture, we can AI generate a picture of you with some old school hair.
Out
that
there,
feels
man.
like a good use of AI.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it's there for.
There's one particularly that would be really good. The second thing to the point outside of Nick having great hair. Was what he was modeling and was experiencing was this church toast thing of just seeing God doing a deep healing work within the hearts of people, as illustrated through the Wolf Michael story Saturday night.
Yeah.
But that led to the name change. You want to go into the Schatzman narrative a little bit? We got time to do that.
No, I would love that.
Because it's a great story.
Please, I think it's helpful.
Well, the releasing nature, we talked about, the Grove Church and New Heights, Fayetteville, and Fellowship's, Saturday nights participation and all of that. But we were keeping our eye on this brokenness thing because we felt like that, if you anticipate Spirit-led momentum and where God is really working, Henry Blackaby's, watch where God's active and join him in that. We felt like we needed to lean into that narrative, and it was a move. It was a work of the Spirit. Russell was real influential in helping shape a culture back in that day. He called it the culture response. And the response was to the empowering presence of Jesus and what he may be doing in community and what he may be doing in worship. Let's watch for that and then respond to it. And so the broken narrative was really something we were very comfortable with, and like Nick's saying, you didn't need a collective of victims. There was biblical accountability to move toward healing and the redemptive narrative that God brings out of brokenness. But Mark Schatzman and I met one another through a pastoral cohort that we were in Dallas together, and I'd heard great things about Mark. He was down in Little Rock at the time, pastoring down there. And so we were at this pastor's cohort in Dallas, and the guy that was leading the cohort, one of the things you needed to bring was kind of a written statement of your philosophy of ministry, vision and mission and all that. And to be honest with you guys, most of it was just kind of like textbook seminary, stuff.
Yeah.
And so Mark kind of reads through his textbook seminary philosophy of ministry and mission and vision, and then he put his paper down, and he leaned back, put his arms behind his head, and says, guys, but I dream of a church where all are broken, all matter, and one gets the glory. I reached across the table and tore his paper up and put it, I didn't know Mark, other than having been introduced to him at that time, and threw it in the trash. And I said, Mark, I don't know what that is on the front part of your paper, but what you just described is what God is doing on Saturday nights in Northwest Arkansas. Eventually, Mark comes on staff. We begin to, share with leaders and small group and leadership training. Hey, what do you guys think about this? And it was just real clear that Mosaic metaphor needs to become a defining element of this congregation. And it did, and we do, and I always hope we will.
Chip, that's such valuable insight just to where we've gotten, where we are today. And sometimes, we say different things oftentimes in services around church, and it's easy just to forget why we say it or what it means. We say that all are broken, all matter, one get the glory pretty frequently around Mosaic. And so it's really insightful and powerful to hear kind of what that came out of. That's a great segue. Nick, I asked Chip the question on Saturday night that I'd like to ask you when you think of Fellowship Mosaic, what is your hope for our congregation? What's your prayer life? Kind of take us into what that looks like when you pray for Fellowship Mosaic.
The first thing I pray regularly is this prayer that John Eldridge teaches people, which is, I give everyone and everything to you. And then I just start listing the things, because I have a tendency to be anxious and want to hold on to things. So the first thing I regularly pray is I can be anxious about the future of Mosaic. I can be anxious about the health of Mosaic. Where are we going? Is this okay? Is this good? So the first thing I have to pray daily is, Lord, I give Mosaic to you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the first thing I just have to pray is, like, this is your church. It's not mine. My anxieties, my worries, my fears about where we're going. So that's the first thing that I pray almost daily is, Lord, I give everyone everything to you. I give Mosaic and her people to you. And so that's the first place that I'm praying regularly, is just constantly trying to entrust these people to the Lord, and that it would be his church, that it would not be any person's vision, any person's passion point, that it really would be Jesus's church, and that he would do what he would like to do with this church. And then in and through that, one of the things that you kind of alluded to earlier, or brought up earlier, that it is a constant prayer of mine, is this tension between a church that is deeply committed to the healing and the health and the growth of its members, which is where I think we've been strong for a long time now, and a church that is committed to being open-handed, not just willing to let people go, but actually casting a vision for people to be sent. And in my experience here, you chronicled the story of so many people that have been sent from Mosaic to go start new things, to reach new people. And for so long, if Chip said we don't want a collection of victims, if there was a threat to victimhood, it was the victimhood of people keep leaving us. There goes Jim Hall to go start New Heights in Fayetteville. Jim left us, Oh, there goes Seth Prim to go launch Bentonville and then go down to Christ the King. There goes Matt Newman to Samaritan Springdale. There goes Colin and Scott. And there can be this, we're always the abandoned ones. And there is actually a feeling there that is really healthy, that needs to be acknowledged, and that's grief.
Yeah.
There is a grief of sending. And I think it's what I'm 3 years away from Karis graduating and leaving the home, and I'm already grieving. So I really do think like launching a child into the world is a fantastic metaphor for what a church goes through when they send. Because on the one hand, like I love my daughter so much, and while I would say in one sense I would love it if she just lived with us forever, in the other sense that's absolutely not what I want.
I don't know if Karis would.
Karis would not like that. I know as much as it will shatter my heart not to have her wake up in our home every day. I really know that is what is right and good, is for her to leave me and Cassie, right? And for her to go start a family and start a home of her own. And so that doesn't make the grief of it any less real. Chip, you've launched 4.
Yeah.
Right? You know the grief.
Yes, indeed.
And so one of my prayers for Mosaic is that we can begin to reframe how we tell that story. And instead of, oh, shucks, everybody always leaves us, to look at what God has done. Does it hurt like crazy? Is it such a loss to have people we love? There's not a day, that might be an exaggeration. There's multiple days a week that I feel a deep sting and pain that my friend Colin is not in the office next door to me anymore. Like, I can't tell you the number of days I'll be going through something hard, and I literally will walk out my office, round the corner, and expect to see him sitting in that office so I can go talk to my friend. And he's not there.
Yeah.
Like, I feel that loss keenly.
Yeah.
And it is a movement of God that I celebrate that Colin's in New York City.
Yeah.
And so my hope and prayer is that we would continue to hold 2 things in tension. One is like a deep connectedness and desire for healing in our body, where we love each other radically. And that community would be so healthy that we can celebrate and grieve sending more people. We said this when we announced Colin and Scott. We said this in 2021 after Mark and Newman and Paige and Joy and Doug and that whole crew and Susan Thomas all left. We said, this is really hard to send so many people, and buckle up because we're going to do it again.
Right.
And sure enough, 4 years later, we send Colin and Scott and Aaron. And so my prayer is that we would be a place that is so deeply healthy that we are prepared to actually cast a vision for sending. The person who articulated this better, and I've heard anyone say it, was Aaron Jackson. We were at Stadia, which is the church planting assessment program we use to help check people out to be church planters. And when Colin and Scott and Aaron were giving their presentation to the Stadia crew on why they were going to plant a church, Aaron said, in my time at Mosaic, for the first time in my life, I experienced church as family. And it was so healing and so beautiful. And we are going to plant a church because I want to give that gift to other people.
Yeah.
That they can experience church as family too.
Yeah.
And so my prayer for Mosaic is that we would be both, that we would be this radically open, welcoming, loving family, and a really generous sending family that begins to tell that story with joy and vision. And I think we're heading in that direction, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, over the years, I've been busted for the overuse of metaphors, rightfully so. You know, I'll own that. But I remember in the early years of Mosaic, around some of the conversations we were having, one of the things we always wanted to be early on was kind of the Area 51 of Fellowship, you know, the R&D, where you could try ideas and try things out, knowing that it was on a Saturday night, and it was a little more of a smaller crowd, so if you blew it up, the collateral damage was not quite what it would be on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
But if something really worked, we'd run it up, you know, and say, hey, Robert, this thing's working. And so that for years that we would try ideas and experiment in leadership development and evangelism and discipleship, there was always this freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously the Mosaic, as all are broken, all matter, one gets the glory. Just as Nick was just saying, you know, helping people get healthy and heal.
Right.
But I was kind of out there, and I was watching Nick when I was doing this Saturday night, Jack, but I really see the next big move, you know, metaphor is a congregational incubator that the track record of producing and releasing A-team leaders and sending them out into the region and across the nation has been pretty good for Mosaic, And just, I think we're postured. I think that we are in a situation, I think with a leadership culture, the leadership team, both staff and non-staff, just what Nick described. I look forward to the next 5 or 10 years at Mosaic and seeing what's released from this dear group of people.
Me too. Maybe the last question that I just want us to, that I kind of just want to throw out for us is, Chip, you talk about over 25 years ago, this language and this group of people that were waymakers, right? People that were willing to we talked about this Saturday night in Antioch, that were kind of willing to break formation, deviate from the norm in order for more people to experience the goodness of Jesus, as well as the mission and vision we really believe in here at Fellowship. That seems to really connect with 50 by 50. And that gets me really excited. So I just wanted to take a moment. One, would you just kind of remind for those listening, or for those that don't know what 50 by 50 is, what it is, and kind of how, over the next really 8 years now, we're already 2 years into this 10-year deal, how that connects to something like Waymakers over 25 years ago.
Oh, that's good, man. Yeah, 50 by 50 is a multiplication initiative.
Okay.
And when you're planning congregations and you're planning churches, it takes financial resources to do that.
Right.
Another hallmark of not only Mosaic, but I think Fellowship, is generosity. There's a culture of generosity here that's been developed through leaders like Lamar Steiger and Don Reed. For those of us who've taken a line and get in on the understanding of the theology of generosity.
Yeah.
So you had all that going on. And Mickey and some of the elders and some of the senior leaders here at Fellowship were just saying, as we brought Fellowship Fayetteville online and we brought Fellowship Bentonville online, overall it was in the neighborhood of about $50 million to do that, but God did it. We didn't. The first thing you'll realize, if you're new to Mosaic and you're new to Fellowship, aim low. Lower your expectations, because we're not smart enough to figure all these things out. But
true.
God is amazing in what he does. And so 50 by 50 was saying by the time Fellowship turns 50, at that time we were celebrating 40 years of Fellowship.
That's right.
Over the next 10 years, could we believe and trust God that in order to grow and to multiply and have a broader influence for the kingdom across the region and the nation and around the world, based on the hearts that are so generous here at Fellowship, can we jump in and be part of that kind of movement together? And the response has been overwhelming. It has been so encouraging so far in what's going on. And so that's the call. It's just, hey, invest your life with your time, talent, and treasure. And, man, we all want to be something bigger than ourselves. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to, I don't know. I asked Robert several years ago when I got here, I said, is Fellowship and what God's doing here in Northwest Arkansas, is this a hiccup? I mean, is this just an anomaly within the body of Christ, or is this part of something bigger? And Robert's response wisely at the time was, yet to be determined. I think we're part of something bigger. Well, what's going on with multiplication through the Oz Collective, which is a network of churches here in the Ozarks, and just our influence through cohorts and foxholes across the country, there's a big kingdom movement in play, and we've been invited to be a part of it, and why not invest your life into it?
Yeah, well said, Chip. Nick, care to add any thoughts to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree that the idea of a leadership incubator has been on my personal 5-year dream for Mosaic for a couple of years now, and the generosity of our body, yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I do pray for is that the leadership base of Mosaic would be secure and stable. I think that's, going back to the family metaphor, that's something that leads to launching well. Is when the family is healthy and the parenting leadership is stable, the launching can go well. When there are cracks in that, the launching is really hard. And so that's one of the things, to people in our body who are saying, gosh, another launch, that sounds scary. One of the things we're working really hard to do is to build a stable leadership team that's going to go the distance 5 to 10 years and be here for a long time to create some stability, while we also bring in some people that we can develop and launch and send. And so I think that's part of the dream, is that you can keep your eye on the health of the body and the sending at the same time. Like, you have to do both.
Yeah,
you have to do both, because if you to what you preach Saturday night, like, if the mission outpaces the experience of God's grace in the body, you end up in a legalism that chews people up and spits them out. And we don't want that. And so I think working for that balance is the thing that we're striving for.
Yeah, if I could piggyback on Nick's thought there. Years ago, Gary Harrell invested deeply into our leadership team, and he said one of the major focus that you always have as a leadership culture, and in a producing, releasing culture of spiritual leaders, is to always deepen and expand the core. And Colin and Scott were before the elders with Nick when Anthology was being ramped up for release a couple of years ago. And one of our elders asked Colin and Scott, said, guys, what will you do the first 12 months of this church plant in Brooklyn? And, I mean, they did not miss a beat. They said, we will do what Robert and Gary and Mick did back in the day. We will deepen and expand the core. And as we saw in that video the other night, going to that atrium, as they're deepening, they are expanding.
Oh, yeah.
And to Nick's point, I think that's just one of the things, particularly with our community group pastors and community group leaders and the training we do into leadership development, you never get off of that. Deepen and expand the core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said, Chip. Guys, thank you so much for the time. For those listening, just as a reminder, the 50 by 50 initiative is not $50 million by 2050. It is $50 million by our 50th anniversary, which is 2034. And honestly, it's my hope, what's been compelling to me as I learn more about Mosaic's story and Fellowship's story alike, to hear folks 25 plus years ago that committed to being a way maker for other people to come in. It is my hope, both for the Roberts as well as the rest of Mosaic, to be a people that, just as like we received that gift, that we would also be a people that we would be willing to pass that gift on as well. And so, just seems like a really wonderful opportunity, not only to, like you mentioned, raise funds that are necessary to have church planting, or to plant churches and congregations and that kind of thing, but also that we would be a people that would continue to grow love for our neighbors that aren't quite yet a part of our body. So, Chip, thank you for the time, man. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Jack. Love you guys dearly.
Love you too. Grateful for y'all. I'm grateful for the people of Mosaic.
Awesome. Well, Mosaic, thanks for listening. Have a great week, and see you later.